much for coming. I really appreciate it. Many of you I recognize your faces, so I know you're familiar with the museum, but there's also some new faces. So I want to welcome you to the museum if you've never been here before. My name is Delana Trim. I'm the curator of collections, and I had the profound honor to curate this exhibit by these three fantastic Oklahoma artists. Their body of work is amazing. Their life stories are fascinating, and I know that they are going to enthrall us with wonderful stories tonight. We're going to start out in here. We can finish up in there, but this way you can be nice and comfortable. Feel free to get up and get some food, drink, whatever during the talk. But again, wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. The exhibit is up until October 23rd, so there's plenty of time to come back or bring your friends. And on that note, I am going to turn it over to these artists, and they can give a short bio of what they want to tell you and start telling their stories.
Okay. Wow. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everybody to the museum and to the art show with all three of us. We dreamed this up about 1.5 years ago, and we all work really hard as artists, and I thought, why not all three of us have a show together? And the museum here decided to sponsor it, and they've done a wonderful job. So I want to give the museum staff. And you know, like I set out with the sculpture, I love this museum. It's been my life. And I'm 81 years old now. So when I dreamed this up, all of us dreamed this up, I thought, am I really going to produce a show at 81? Well, I was wondering about that. And so I decided, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I hope you like the work that I've made. I don't paint a whole lot, but I decided for this particular exhibit, I would paint a lot. And I started my art career painting lettering signs on cars back in the 50s in my little town of Ada, Oklahoma, where I'm from. And I started pinstriping. When I was 16, I was the pinstriper in the town. And so when I started painting these black and white designs, I get my hand and I go like this, and I love the feeling of it. It's just such a wonderful feeling to be able to do that with my hand and arm. And so I really got carried away. I've got about 20 and more of these at my home right now. So that's a lot. But you know, it's just been a fun thing. And when I think of stories, you know, there are a lot of people here that I have stories about. I'm not sure I should tell them.
Can you speak up a little bit? We cannot hear you on the
Okay,
back.
so you can hear. I'll speak louder. When I think of stories, I think of a word in my older years now, and it's called gratitude and love. Gratitude is very important for me. And with this show, I think about seeing some of you people here that have known me through my whole career. And many of the people that have come here tonight, I have a lot of gratitude for you. Because when you're an artist, you make a choice to be an artist. And sometimes that choice is rugged. There have been times in my career when I thought, why am I doing what I'm doing when I could go do something else, make more money, but I wouldn't feel as good. So you just continue to do it. I've always continued to do it. In spite of some setbacks, I continue to be an artist. And so I have a lot of gratitude for all the people that are here tonight and all the people that aren't here tonight that have helped me achieve the success of myself as an artist. Because without that success, and without the help of these two artists, and particularly Mr. Henry with the sculpture, none of it would exist. Without all of these other people helping make us be successful, none of it would exist. So when I think about personal friends who have helped me, I think about Jack Herron. I did a workshop at the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. with Jack Herron. We made 2 friends out there. They were from Kenai, Alaska. And so they turned out they were Kenai native folks. And they invited us out for a drink. Well, we didn't realize that they were a matriarchal society. So we found ourselves being escorted to have a drink and the chairs pulled out and everything being paid for. We didn't exactly know what to do, Jack and I. And then walking back after the treats, they started telling us that they were there talking to their senators, and one of the person was a Kennedy Center artist. They were billionaires. And we were going, what are we doing in Oklahoma? I think we should go to Alaska, Jack. But we stayed in Oklahoma. And we've given our lives and our support and education and the arts to developing the arts in Oklahoma. And I think that's what it's about. And to the students out there that I've had, it's always been my gratitude for their interest and their support of the arts in the schools and the arts in the colleges. And like, we always have to push to make it happen. And so when I think of organizations, I think of the Oklahoma Art Education Association. I've been a member of that for 50 years. And we always push to get the visual arts into the schools. We always keep things going. I think of the Oklahoma Alliance for Arts Education. We always push. And then, of course, the most essential part of the arts that I have gratitude for is the people who help develop, and some of those people are here tonight, the Oklahoma Arts Council. With its development, the arts in Oklahoma have really prospered and really done well. And just recently, they're talking about some sort of major money coming our way, possibly through a federal grant system. And so I'm sitting here crossing my fingers that all happens. So be sure and call your representative or your senator. And who knows the name of that particular funding thing?
It's ARPA funding.
Pardon?
It's ARPA funding.
Arts what?
It's ARPA, it's part of the American Rescue Plan. It's the statewide funding. That's what they're
Okay.
working on.
We need that, so be sure and call. Tell your senator, tell your House member to support that. Tell me one more time what it's called.
ARPA.
ARFA.
ARFA.
Say it again.
ARPA.
ARTA. ARPA. ARPA. We need that support. We need that money. And so I'm just full of gratitude for everybody that's here. And I have a lot of gratitude that at 81, hopefully when I'm 82, I can do another show. I'm just not sure, but I'll keep painting and see. And also, keep making art. I know a lot of you all are artists, and I know that through gratitude with what we do, you gain insights into your own consciousness, and you learn about yourself, and you learn to accept yourself. And what's most of all with the arts, when you really get into that, you start learning how to be happy for yourself. And we all want to be that way. And I will say, when I get into my art and I start painting, I get really happy. I sort of get drunk when I just do it. And I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that, but I love the happiness feeling and the bliss of art. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Sharon, go next.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to be here. It's a miracle for me because after COVID, the whole time I just kept making art. You never know if it's going to be seen or not. So this is my second museum show. My first time was in 1987 at the Oklahoma Museum of Art when it was in the Buttram Mansion. So that was like my first miracle, and this is my second. And I'm just thrilled that the staff is divine. Everybody here is so easy to be with and learn from, and I am probably the hardest art that was hung with that glass out there. So I am grateful that they got it up. So and it's so nice because my house is little, and my walls are covered with art. So I finally decided to do the ceiling, right? So anyway, it's something about being an artist that you never ever stop, and it either takes you out or it keeps you going. Either way, it's like amazing to me. I just was born like that, and I just have always been doing it. So when I gave my first talk at the Oakland Museum of Art, I said, art is an ageless profession. You begin at any time in your life. And I really believe that. I've always taught that, and I believe it. I also say that it doesn't have to match the couch or the chairs, because it's going to outlive both. So the truth is that I had a studio in Paseo in 1982, my first time to come to Oklahoma. And it was wonderful. I had a printmaking studio, and during that time I met all of the wonderful artists in Oklahoma. It was just amazing to me. I had no idea why I landed here, and it's been perfect. But in 1989 I left, and I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and lived for 10 years and kept working my way west, and ended up going down to Baja, Mexico for 6 years. So the glass outside that you see that has red figures in it, those are pictographs from Baja, where I used to live. And I was told by a shaman in Mexico named Cecilia Garcia that all of the red paint on the walls in Baja was done by women, because the chief gave red paint to the women. So some of the figures that I actually have in the glass are 15 feet tall. And there's also a wonderful place in Baja that are just a cove that is for ritual for women, that those figures are 20 feet tall. So because of COVID, I couldn't go to Mexico and visit my friends. I brought it to me. So that's the last part of my body of work. I did the mermaids and everything also because of Baja. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm just glad to be here. And I wrote a poem because I have been writing for a long time. I started in the 80s and kept journals. So I had no idea when I came back to live in Oklahoma 16 years ago that I'd end up writing books from my journals. So I went back to school and I couldn't spell nor did I read very well. So, and I'm dyslexic, so it's sort of a miracle that I have 3 books. So I really just found out I'm a storyteller. So I actually was just going to stand up and read a poem because I talk too much. So I'm going to read you a poem. I'm going to pass out a few pieces of, there's molds up here with glass in them, so you can see I make, some of the glass images have a mold and some are abstract. But the ones that have a mold, those figures can be reproduced in different colors. So I was just experimenting. I ended up making 40 molds. But before I came here, I was doing clay in Mexico. And so I brought 3 of the sculptures that I did down there. So thank you so much for having this opening. Thank you for coming. And I see faces I know and faces I don't. So I'm happy to be here. It's just a very exciting time for me. So I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote. It's called Artisan Sage. I found my way home to Oklahoma in 2006 after living in Baja, Mexico for 6 years. I see myself on a long walk, finding wisdom inside mirrored glass and still images, moving through transparent and opaque ideas. While gathering, I continue to reach for perfection. I sculpt every piece of art from another's recycled steel, which appears like leftover parts of life, discarded, thrown aside, unusable, but still full of beauty. Experimenting, that's what artists do, to survive in a world full of chaos. They dig up truths while stirring the pot, putting energy in every piece of art, as they pray to live long enough to get their lessons done and pass them on. Learning and forgiving becomes a freedom that living life brings home to creative seekers. At this time in my life, I'm climbing mountains of unknown origin while standing on red dirt to share what I've unearthed in my life that is real. As my body frees itself, hanging on to old, I ask for freedom from the wind to blow across this land with enough breeze to erase my worn out footprints. I've known love and loss, climbed mountains inside the body of an old soul seeking wisdom, gathered not paying attention while doing this dance more than once. Learning until my last breath, I have tasted tender saplings of an aging tree as I reach every day for sunlight. I'm a woman seeking truth from all the faces of God, determined to explore and discover despite obstacles. Past lives and new energies are brought to the creative surface by a seeker of truth. That's me. Today I stand with the company I wish to keep, and that's you. Thank you very much.
This will not take long because I came here to see art, and I love to see art. I'd like to start by recognizing someone very, very special to me, and that's my wife, Angela. Would you please raise your hand? Artists have a hard time sometimes struggling with the parameters of what they're involved with, and having understanding people around you, friends, family, is really important for the growth and sustainability of an artist. And my two daughters were going to come tonight. My daughter Lauren is here with her friend Mike, and you know, when Lauren was born, something very special happened, and Angela and I tried to express our creative impetus to her, and she painted and made art, and of course I was with education with Patrick and a lot of you who Bob Curtis and Jack Heron, and my passion was traveling around the state and trying to get everyone to believe in how important art was in the development of young children. I happen to think it's very important. I think it is the most important thing that we can transfer to the children that we raise. And here in Oklahoma, when I came here in 1981, I felt like I'd come something out of the grapes of wrath. You know, I mean, it was different, and I had to relearn the whole culture, and I did. And my first job here in Oklahoma was working with a crew of Mennonite men building barns in Corn, Oklahoma, and I did that for a year. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most enjoyable years of my life because we worked hard and we built barns, and it was hot. It was really, really hot. And from that experience, I learned to appreciate the basic foundations of Oklahoma and what it stands for. And that's why there's a piece of Oklahoma in everything I do. And the eagle that Patrick and I worked on together out there, you're gonna see that auger. That once was a grain auger and a truck feeding the world. And the sculptures that are out here, there's a little piece of farm implements and pieces of wheels of tractors and elements of this and elements of that, and it's all a piece of Oklahoma. So I try to bring a piece of Oklahoma into everything I do because I think it's Oklahoma's story. And it's a story of hard work. So you see a finished work out there, beautiful glass, beautiful paintings, but what you don't see is the sweat, okay, the sweat. And it takes time, it takes years, it takes endurance, and it takes a sustainability of the spirit. And for me, my family, my students that's here tonight, their creativity, their essence of their creativity, exploring the things that they do, inspire me. They inspire me to create. They inspire Patrick. Patrick's stories inspire me. He knows a story about everything. I listened to stories from Patrick from Oklahoma to New York and back twice. I think Patrick was trying to keep me from falling to sleep at the wheel, but he can talk for 15 hours straight. And when he said we're going to have a show in Shawnee, I said, oh, okay. All right, and he did it. He did it. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you for coming.
Mike, before we finish, you know, I just have to introduce your boyfriend, Mike. with Scotland, right? Mike's one of these people you see playing for the Thunder. Let's give him a round of applause. That's all we talked about going to New York and back. You guys' relationship, we got it figured out. And
Go
by the way, before we get into questions, because Ann reminded me, I do want you to know, my wife Joni's not here, but she's a big part of all my creativity. Just be aware of that, and my family. So now let's open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions they want to ask, now's a good time to do it. Just raise your hand if you have a question.
Where are your studios?
Okay, my studio is in the upper floor of my home. I have a home studio.
Where is that?
It's in Bethany, 8101 Bridgeport Lane in Bethany.
Ms. Montgomery?
You can look me up on the Oklahoma Arts Council's visual artist roster where I live. It has my phone number and my email. So if you want to get in touch with me, just go to their roster under Oklahoma Arts Council.
Okay, Ms.
I also have a website, G. Patrick Riley, if you want to look there.
Ms.
Where's
Montgomery,
yours?
where's your studio?
It's in my home also. Actually, I sold a big house and rented a little house thinking I was leaving and I'm still here, so I'm wall-to-wall art. And I live in the village in Oklahoma City.
Mr. Henry?
My first studio was in Mears, Oklahoma. I built an octagonal structure, 17 and a half feet tall, no supporting walls, based on the St. Peter's Basilica, the Duomo in Florence, and the Winter Pavilion from Lake Placid in 1980 from the Austrian exhibit. So I took elements of those three structures and built a studio. And I sold that when I moved to Yukon, and it's now a bed and breakfast and former artist studio. I had only thought renting for $225 a night. So my current studio is basically at Cameron University, and we have a large facility there that I can go down on weekends or on days that I don't teach. And I have my welders and all my tools down there, so that's what I'm using. That's what we use to fabricate the stainless steel sculpture that you see out front, and the sculpture in Colony. Studio out of your home doesn't work for me. I'm afraid I'll burn it down. Welding and wood don't really go together.
Hey Glenn, I want to be sure to introduce Edna McMillan, the
Yes.
chairman of the Visual Art Department at Cameron University. She tolerates me coming in to visit, so thank you, Edna.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Any other questions?
Mr. Riley, what inspired you to do mass?
You know, I've been doing math since 1972. And I became inspired by going to the Hopi lands and seeing the Hopi Kachinas. And one of the paintings out there is me in 1972 with my back to you, looking at the sun on top of Walpi Mesa, which is a 900-foot mesa. And I'm having a discourse with a Hopi Kachina doll maker and Kachina dancer. And so I lived out there some, and I lived in the Navajo lands, and then I came back to Oklahoma and I've lived here. But I started becoming very interested in mask creations of the natives first. Then I became interested in African mask, and I went to the Smithsonian and worked in the Kennedy Center, but this with the Smithsonian in their African mask collection, and was able to see masks there. And I actually wore some of the dragon masks that they made, that they spit fire out of. And then I loved the mask. I showed mask in New Orleans back in the 70s. And so I've been around the world sort of looking at mask. A Bali mask have fascinated me. And I guess you gave me a Bali mask here, didn't you? A couple weeks ago. And so I started I actually created a curriculum at Northeast High School when I taught art there, where I taught mask making through the whole school year. I taught art through the use of the mask. So I've been pretty much involved with it in a big way.
Okay, Ms. Montgomery, did you cut out metal pieces on your?
No, what I did was, when I first came back from Mexico, I was I was actually applying for a job to do a piece of outdoor sculpture, and so I went to the local steel people here, and there was all kinds of, like, they were like 12 by 8 foot pieces of steel that were cut out. There were already images that were from sign makers, right? So I asked these people, what were they doing? It was just laying on, now they wouldn't be laying on the ground and giving it away because it's worth a lot more. But they gave me 3 big pieces of steel that were cut out. Like, they call it the dropouts of whatever sign they're making or whatever. So I took it home and I just took pieces of tape and taped on it until I decided where to cut it, and I took it back so they would chop it. Now I make my son do it. But it's, so I just take leftover recycled steel, powder coat it, and then cut it up to do whatever I want to do with it. So what I wanted to do was get rid of the letters in it. You know, you can see in the cat out there, it still has the letter C in it. But mostly I just cut right through it. I put pieces of tape where I wanted to change the alphabet, in other words, to mine. So, but I buy it already cut out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Henry, are you the one that did the very fine, things out there with a lot of ink and little?
Yes, and welding is a touch. It's like writing. It's like handwriting, and I'm really good at welding because I worked on the first nuclear submarine in Groton, Connecticut, and was a rated welder for General Dynamics building the Ohio. So I was on a crew that put in the sonar insert, the torpedo tubes, and the foundations for the missile silos, and then was starting to work on the reactor room when I decided to move to Oklahoma. Now, my reason for coming to Oklahoma is I thought I was going to get wealthy in the oil fields and become a welder. So in 1981, when I got to Oklahoma, the oil boom went. So that's why I ended up welding barns together with Mennonites in Corn, Oklahoma. But I got reintroduced to Oklahoma. My grandfather was a farmer in Lone Wolf. I love Oklahoma, and I've lived here since 1981. All of my education was outside of Oklahoma, in Arizona, New York, and Connecticut. When the metal that I work with, I cut it, I weld it, I grind it. I don't paint these pieces. Sometimes I do paint pieces and add color to it. But I like the purity of the raw steel in this particular show. There's only one painted piece, and that's the piece with the turret on it that spins around at the top, the carving when you first come in here. So, but welding, when Patrick approached me about the Colony Eagle and this eagle, Patrick can't weld because his lungs will not sustain the smoke, and he needs to stay. He's nowhere near me when I'm welding. He opens the door and he goes out and he says, "I got to get out of here," because it's not good for him to be around smoke. And I can handle that very well. I put the blowers on me, and I try to be as safe as I can when I'm welding and teaching my students how to weld. But you do have to be really careful. It's a dangerous profession. So.
Anything else anybody has? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Let's go see the show.
Yeah.
Thank